Hi guys, welcome back once again to another exciting top 10. This time round I figured it's appropriate, we're in the year of our Lord 2024, and I kind of wanted to take a little look back at what I consider to be some of the best albums of 2014, especially considering that these somewhat important records are going to be turning, 10 years old this year, which frankly, when I think about it, makes me feel like a decrepit old man. So imagine what it'll be like if I decide to actually look at a list of things which are turning 20 this year. Oof. Anyway, gripes about my age notwithstanding, let's start and take a little look at number 10. Now, I can remember a couple years back, there was a huge amount of about Deaf Heaven going into a softer direction when it came to Infinite Granite. Those of us with a little bit more experience in this sort of music will remember when Alceste, the seminal French duo, released Shelter, which was very much a huge far cry from what fans had rather gotten used to, the blackened post-metal. In fact, some people would argue that Alceste were the originators of such a style of music. As to if that's the case or not is open to debate. However, Shelter was very much a huge departure for them, taking on a much more traditional post-rock sound, a lot softer, more gentle, almost poppy in some places. And it garnered a considerable backlash, shall we say, which ended up with the band reverting to their post-black metal roots with subsequent albums. This kind of makes Shelter kind of an entity unto itself within the band's discography, and honestly I absolutely love it. It's so different to what you've come to expect from the band, but it is nonetheless fascinating. It's honestly an incredible look at how a quite brutal and savage band can successfully pull off this kind of softer music, and I adore it. I cannot possibly recommend enough that if you are looking for something within the post-rock realm, which sort of doesn't really break new ground per se, but manages to really tread the ground that it does extraordinarily well, then you can't do worse than Shelter. I would say in terms of my favourite tracks on it, you can't go wrong with Délivrance and La Nuit Marche Avec Moi. Both very much worth checking out. Baby, don't worry about this intensity. It's just the fury of... Ah yes, here we go. Flying Colours and Second Wind. This is easily my favourite of the Neil Morse and Friends collaborations. And while I don't feel this is quite as strong as their debut, I would say that Second Wind still does contain some of the band's best songs. The Fury of My Love, for example, is a particular favourite and a big highlight, as is Peaceful Harbour. I've always been a particular fan of the kind of alt-progressive rock stylings of Flying Colours. There's something about that blend of all the active members involved really coming together and making something that feels like more than the sum of its parts, and I feel that Second Wind really does capture that quite nicely. As I say, I don't think it's quite up there with the strength of their debut, but it is certainly stronger than the third record, because I kind of feel like after Second Wind, Flying Colours kind of fell a little bit off the radar for me. It's fine, it's perfectly fine, their third record, but I do feel like it was very much a case of diminishing returns. It's like they've done what they set out to do with whatever it is they were doing, and that's fine. But I do feel like maybe a fourth Flying Colours album isn't really needed. That being said, Second Wind is a heck of a lot of fun and something that I will keep coming back to because I just can't get enough of its style. So here we go with Behemoth's The Satanist. Now, when you've recovered from a near-fatal illness, a lot of people would plan a lot of things with their lives. But the frontman of Behemoth, the enigmatically named Nurgle, returned from his treatment to bring what I consider to be the band's finest work, resulting in a record that is simply the most savage, evil, and most dangerous-sounding thing the band have ever produced. I do, again, feel that this kind of is the peak of the band. I've not really enjoyed Behemoth's works post The Satanist that much, but I think when you've got something as strong as this record within your catalogue, I don't think you can really, complain too much about not being able to get to as high a point as that. This is honestly one of the most affecting, most disarmingly brilliant records I've listened to in my life. If you like death metal, You want something that really punishes you and really smacks you across the face with its intensity and brutality, then The Satanist is incredibly hard to beat, and I cannot recommend enough that you check this one out. To get yourself started, I would say check out closing track O Father, O Satan, O Son, and Ben Sahar. The closing track, of course, of O Father, O Satan, O Son, is easily, for me, one of the strongest closing tracks of any album released in the 2000s so far. It is genuinely brilliant, and I cannot stress enough how much it really changed the landscape of death metal for me, so please check this one out if you haven't heard it already. You know, I've never really fully understood how to pronounce this band's name. I'm always like, is it Flaming Row? Is it Flaming Row? Like having a flaming row with your parents or whatever. Or is it Flaming Row, as in like a row of flames? And it's one or the other. And the chances are, over the course of this video, I'm going to end up pronouncing it Row or Row, depending on what comes into my head first. But I digress. This is the follow-up to, I believe their debut was El Noir, I think. Don't quote me on that, my notes are sketchy today. But I do feel that of the albums that they have released, Flaming Row's catalogue, obviously consisting of El Noir, this one, Mirage, Betrayal of Figures, and subsequent after that, The Pure Shine, which was based off the works of Stephen King's The Dark Tower. This is most assuredly their strongest, most fully realised, and incredibly convoluted and self-indulgent release. This very much takes the usual sort of multi-vocalist prog metal concept album things, you know, the likes of Aerion or Tobias Sammet's Avantasia, you know, that kind of thing where it's got this massive bombast of multiple vocalists, huge sweeping orchestral moments, massive variety in sounds, and everything in the kitchen sink just basically piled into one place. This album is a bit of a tough listen because it does come in at like 80 minutes long over the course of, I think it's 8 or 9 tracks, something like that, over not many tracks, and it's kind of bookended by a 16-minute epic and a near 20-minute epic at the end with like really big songs in between it. It doesn't muck about, but it is so worth looking into because as ridiculous as it is, as overblown and over the top as this record never ceases to be, it's just so much fun. There are so many moments on this record that just make me squeal and go giddy every now and again whenever I hear them, and I really can't wait. If you haven't heard this one, please check it out. I would love to know what you think of this one. I find it's one of those sort of more undergroundy kind of prog metal releases, which never really got its dues when it came out, but I'm finding more and more people are finding it lately and really appreciating what the band are doing. So fingers crossed we get something following up from The Pure Shine, and hopefully it's a bit more like this, because I'm not as keen on The Pure Shine. This record, though, mamma mia. Check out the opening and closing tracks if you're not sure where to start with this one, because they give you a really good indication as to what the entire record is about. Oh, here we go. It's Opeth, and it's their second album in their sort of like transition away from death metal into a more kind of 70s prog thing, basically. Now, I will make no secret of it. I never have made a secret of it. I prefer Opeth. I am a bigger fan of the death metal side of things, when Mickey Ackerfeld would go "Rrr" a lot, and he wasn't afraid to use like the big crunchy guitars and the big drums and blast beats and all those good death metal bits and pieces, but, you know, blended with a bit of prog metal into there as well. I mean, obviously nowadays, well, we don't know what they're doing nowadays because it's been like 4 years since we last had a record from Opeth, so I was like, what the hell are you doing, guys? Anyway, this particular record I do feel is the strongest record in terms of their new era. And it's not even their new era anymore, is it? It's their current era. It's who a lot of people associate the band with being now, you know. I do think it's almost a 50-50 split between records. It's like, which is the death metal and which is the proggy one. But this one I do feel is the strongest of them, because I don't feel it's gone completely away from its original roots. Heritage kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater and was like, we are completely 70s prog, forget everything else. But then Pale Communion came back and gave us a little bit darker of an edge. You know, we're not quite into the death growl territory, we're not quite into the blast beats or the, you know, massively down-tuned guitars or anything like that, but we do have a darkness that was almost lacking in Heritage. It's nice that Opeth weren't fully just ditching everything, and I do feel that this record is a really strong indicator of the best of both worlds for me. As a result, I absolutely love this album. I think it's fantastic, and I really do think that if you have been a bit sort of on Opeth since Heritage, and you're kind of like me and you like the death metal side of things, do go back to this one. I think it's aged incredibly well, and I do feel like if they can reproduce the magic that they got with this record, if they ever make another one, fingers crossed, then I'm fine with that, I will be fine with that. I would say if you're not sure where to start with this album, check out Moon Above, Sun Below, and Voice of Treason. Now, I don't speak a word of Icelandic, so I'm quite certain I will get any and all pronunciation of this album, the band, and the various track names completely wrong. So if there is anybody out there who does speak Icelandic, I do apologise in advance. Solstafir's Otta is, for me, honestly one of the most important albums of my life, as I do feel that this record in particular was instrumental in opening up my interest to black metal. I just feel that without this album, I never would have really garnered an appreciation for that particular type of music. And it's how well this particular album manages to blend the typical, wintry, dirge-like, lengthy song structures of black metal, but manages to bring in that post-rock vibe beautifully. Kind of like the earlier mentioned Alcest, this is very much kind of like that post-black metal kind of thing. But whilst I feel the aesthetic of Alcest is a lot cleaner than this, Solstafir have very much got the whole Nordic winter thing going on. There's this unmistakable atmosphere of grime, of winter chill, of just this black and white world. There's something about this album which just feels black and white. But I love it. I love it so, so much. And genuinely, I would say that if you don't know where to go with black metal, if you're kind of looking to maybe get into it, perhaps, you could do a heck of a lot worse than this record, because it worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you as well. I don't know. It's worth a shot. Give it a try, and absolutely check out the title track. If you're not going to listen to anything else from this list, check out the title track of Solstafir's Otta. I would comfortably call it like the black metal version of the Eagles' Journey of the Sorcerer. There is something about it. It's that banjo, there's a little banjo riff that sort of carries this song, and it is just absolutely glorious. I love it so much. I really hope that you guys check this one out, and really hope you get a kick out of it as well. Here we go. Australia's finest. Certainly one of the best examples for me of a complete antithesis of the sophomore slump. Citadel is, for me, the best Neobliviscaris album ever, and probably ever will be. There was something about this particular one that really hit me hard. Now, I loved Portal of Eye. I still love Portal of Eye, but let's be honest with ourselves. It's really long! It's a very long record. There's a lot going on. There's so much packed into its runtime that it can get a little bit overwhelming at times. Which is where I think they really understood where to take the band further with Citadel. It is a shorter and far leaner experience. There's not a single second wasted on this record. I mean, yes, admittedly, it's fundamentally like 3 songs. Yeah, they're split into various parts, blah, 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 whatever. But let's be real. It's 3 songs. And if we're going to split hairs here, I would say that these are the best songs of the band's career, above and beyond anything else on any of their other albums, which really just strikes me as the fact that Citadel is unquestionably their best record. I mean, I would comfortably say that Devour Me Colossus may be one of the best pure metal experiences of my life. It is such an intense head rush, and there are so many little moments on that song alone that make Citadel worth the entry fee. So if you aren't sure where to go with extreme prog metal, then please, 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 on its 10-year anniversary, check out Neobliviscaris' Citadel. You will not regret it. Okay, here we go. It's one of my least favourite album titles and album arts of all time. It's Richelieu's Living as Ghosts with Buildings as Teeth. Whatever that means, I don't know. Aesthetics aside, and terrible album art aside, this is still an absolutely incredible slice of prog metal that I really, really need more people to listen to. The biggest upset that I have with this record is that it's its 10-year anniversary, okay, which is great, but it's also been 10 years since Richelieu released any material. This is their latest album, and it's 10 years old, and it is criminal to me that we are being denied any more music so far from the band. I have no idea what's going on with them. I'd love them to be working on something. I don't know if they've disbanded. I hope they haven't, because they've got this kind of blend of classic progressive metal combined with this sort of industrial aesthetic of Tool, and they've sort of blended these two things together to create one of the most refreshing, interesting, clean and exciting sounding records I've ever heard in my life. Now, every record from Richelieu is special. Every single record brings something different to the table. They are all worth listening to. But I do feel that Living as Ghosts with Buildings as Teeth is the strongest selection of each individual songs from their album, all put into one place. It might not be the strongest flowing record, it might not even be the best overall, I'm not sure, I haven't decided yet. But in terms of individual moment-to-moment songs, this is a superb collection of music, and you really need to listen to it. Andrew Mailu is one of the greatest vocalists of all time, and frankly, the fact that we haven't heard much of him since this record is utterly criminal. I would implore everybody watching this video, if you've not heard this band before, please check out their entire discography. Start with this one maybe, work your way backwards, however you want to do it. Richelieu are a band that can't afford to be missed, and Living as Ghosts with Buildings as Teeth is one of the greatest progressive metal albums of the last 20 years, and you can quote me on that. I'd cut your teeth with this record on the tracks Landmines and Dark Charade, and you will definitely see what I mean about the vocals being amongst the strongest in the business. You've got a lot to look forward to, and I'm very jealous of you.
11 hours and I can't sleep.
Okay, number 2, Gazpacho's Demon. Now, Gazpacho is a interesting band for me, because I do feel that they've kind of been on a bit of a downward slump since this album. Like, Moloch didn't really do anything for me, neither did Soyez or Fireworker, I think it's called. I didn't vibe with those albums much at all. I kind of listened to them a couple of times and just forgot about it. But then you've got the likes of Demon, you've got Night, you've got TikTok, Mr. Atropos. You know, these are brilliant, brilliant albums, and I do feel that the band really did peak with Demon. There's something about the kind of, I don't know, it's kind of got that sort of a Guillermo del Toro Spanish fairy tale feel about the whole thing, like it's like a pop-up book with demonic creatures and weird clockwork creations waiting to jump out of the pages at you every time you turn over. There's this beautiful, incredible, I don't know, Frenchness to it, if that makes any sense. There is something really French about this, like a Franco-Spanish fusion of weird fairy tale mythology about the entire experience to the album. And as such, it's hard to really compare this to basically anything else out there, which, if that's not prog, then I don't know what is. Honestly, I can't really describe this album in words. It's a very difficult thing to do, which is why you really need to listen to this one. There's so much on here to be excited about, so much that can really just take your breath away with every single subsequent listen. I mean, I've been listening to this record for like 10 years now, and it still manages to make my heart skip a beat at times. It's just wonderful. Pure poetry, storytelling magic, and one of the greatest prog rock albums of all time for my money. If you want to get started with this one, check out The Wizard of Altai Mountains and the multi-part epic suite at the end of the record, Death Room.
I built this road and this journey before you.
Oh, here we go. The greatest album of 2014 for my money is Casualties of Cool, self-titled. Now, my love affair with Devin Townsend is no secret, but what may surprise you is that this esoteric, angular entry into his discography is my personal favourite Devin Townsend release of all time. I'm putting it above the likes of City, I'm putting it above the likes of Epic Loud, I'm putting it above the likes of Terrier, you know, or Ziltoid, or anything like that. Casualties of Cool is the greatest Devin Townsend release, and I will sign my name on that quote. There is something so mysterious, so dark and brooding about this album that I can't quite put my finger on. There is nothing else like it within his discography. This kind of darkened, gothic, space-themed cowboy western music. It's so weird. It's like country and western crossed with a trip to the moon. It is so odd, but it works. On paper it sounds ridiculous, but it's the best way to describe it. But in practice, Casualties of Cool is a record unlike anything else I've ever listened to. And this is in part due to how well Chez-Ami Dorval and Devin Townsend harmonise across the entire record together. You've got the absolutely sky-piercing, beautiful, mournful vocals of Shay, with the sort of ethereal, fog-laden vocals of Devin. The two of them combined make for such an incredibly interesting contrast to each other that across the course of this admittedly quite lengthy record, it's never boring. There is always something different going on. There's always something new to look forward to. And from a compositional level, this is easily one of Devin's most ambitious and most successful works. Now, whether or not you prefer heavy Devi or you prefer soft Devi, I do feel that Casualties of Cool kind of sort of sits somewhere in the middle. I feel the atmospheric stylings of this record are what make it such an interesting listen. And I do feel that even though there is rumour constantly every year of him doing a new version of this, and Casualties of Cool 2 or whatever, I honestly sincerely hope he never does. I think something this interesting, this unique, this stand out in his discography can't be replicated. You should never try and make lightning strike twice. And I do feel that Casualties of Cool is very much a case of lightning striking. If you've not listened to this record, I am honestly sincerely jealous of you because you have one of the most exciting, interesting and unique experiences in progressive music to look forward to. So please do go and check this one out. If you want a good place to start with this album, check out the tracks Bones and The Bridge. It'll give you a great idea of what you've got to look forward to. It's haunting, it's beautiful, it's incredible, and I absolutely love it. So, there we go guys, that was my picks for the top 10 albums of 2014. I know, there's a few things missing from here which I'm certain people will be like, why have you missed that? Transatlantic's Kaleidoscope is missing off here, I know. IQ's Road of Bones is missing, I know. Genuinely not my personal cup of tea. But vive la différence, if we all enjoyed the same things, life would be extremely boring. So, to that end, I would love to know what your personal top 10 favourite albums of 2014 are. What are the records that are turning 10 years old that you love the most? Please tell me about them. I'd love to check them out. I'd love to give a listen to them. As always guys, this is just my opinion on the matter, and if you did enjoy this video, please do share it around with anyone else you think would possibly enjoy it, and please do consider subscribing to the channel for more content. My link tree, as always, will be left down below, where you can find all the usual places to find me on social media. And as always, guys, keep your rhyme signatures extremely odd.